Welcome to The Law Matters. Of course it does. Hi, I'm Debbie Moraes, your host and moderator. This program has been developed to educate, inform, and help you with law matters because the law matters. Understand the law better, and you're in a better position to decide how to protect yourself, your family, and your business. We provide information and resources that will help you decide whether or not you need to or want to contact a lawyer. Perhaps will help you determine that you can actually handle some issues yourself. If you do need professional counsel, you'll be better prepared, and as a result, so will they. Either way, our intention is for you to save time, money, and hopefully to achieve the best possible results. The Bazar and Associates law firm in East Providence continue to donate their time, experience, and insights in the various issues that we tackle, and we want to thank them and welcome first David Bazar. David. And today, a timely topic, voting. The basics you may or may not know, and answers to the questions perhaps you were afraid to ask. Also the latest of updates and issues. As of this taping, the clock is ticking towards the voter rights, voter registration, and our election is but weeks away. So we're very happy today to have with us a special guest, the ideal spokesperson for all of these issues. We want to welcome the Secretary of State from Rhode Island, Nellie Gorbea. Secretary
Thank you so much, Deb.
Glad
it's wonderful to be here. Hi.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. So let's start with some of the basics. We know that voting is a basic foundation of our democracy. Tell us about why someone should vote and how they should vote and who should vote.
So voting is absolutely the way that the people have to make an impact in their daily lives. I know that there's so much media focus on the negative things about money in politics or that it doesn't matter. But the truth is that just in this past primary season, you saw some very unexpected results. My own race was one where nobody predicted that I would win. If all of those people who congratulated me after the primary and said, "Wow, Nellie, I voted for you. I didn't think you were going to win." If all of those people had not voted, I definitely would not be here having this conversation with you. But the truth is that when people go to the polls and exercise that incredible right to vote that so many people have fought so hard for, then change can happen. Now, changing government is not overnight usually, but it can happen. And so, for example, I ran on a platform of making sure that elections were fair, fast, and accurate. And thanks to some really wonderful cooperation and collaboration with the General Assembly leadership, with the members of the General Assembly, with the governor, we were able to purchase new voting machines. And for the first time in over 17 years, Rhode Islanders were able to vote in this past primary on new voting machines, which still used a paper ballot. You fill in the oval instead of connecting the arrow. That was the biggest change I think most people saw. But it was design-wise easier to set up, and so easier on the eye, particularly for our older voters. And then you feed it through the ballot counting machine, and you have the proof that you voted, with the ballot there in the box. You had 3 other layers of security. It's great. I mean, people walked out of the voting booth saying, government did something. We set out to do this, and we did it.
It took you a little while to get that done, but fairly quickly.
Yeah, no, I've been in office for about a year and a half, so it was actually a pretty quick turnaround.
Fast modernization.
Yeah.
So who gets to vote?
So anyone who's over the age of 18 is a U.S. citizen, and you do need to bring to the polling place a photo ID, and most people bring a driver's license. You can bring a U.S. passport. You can bring a college ID of any kind, any higher ed institution in the United States. So a military ID card, all of those work, a RIPTA bus pass or some other sort of government-issued photo ID. However, if for some reason you changed purses that morning and you left your photo ID and you're at the polling place and you don't want to go back and get it, you can still vote by provisional ballot. There is no reason why somebody should be turned away without voting.
What's a provisional ballot?
It's literally what it sounds like. It's a ballot that's provisional, meaning you will vote and it will go into an envelope where you will fill out the information required, like your name, your address, why, basically what are the reasons that you have for not having your ID or whatever reason it is. And then that gets evaluated by the local boards of canvassers. And the local boards of canvassers, if they determine you were eligible to vote based on your signature, they compare the signature that they have on file to your signature, then your ballot is put through the machine and counted.
Would you be able to bring your ID later if that were the issue to take it out of that provisional category?
Oh, no. Once you've filed on their provisional, it's set. I mean,
Right. So it goes
it's a
into
pretty-
that envelope,
yeah.
and then the canvassers look at it to determine whether it's
Yes.
a valid
Exactly.
ballot or not.
And David, in past segments, we've talked about dealing with naturalization. So Nellie mentioned someone who is, well, yes, naturally born, but also when we've had Hispanic, other people from other countries who come in, you've helped them with immigration issues. Is it difficult that you found for them to both become naturalized citizens and then get their right to vote?
Well, you got to go through the process that's been set up, and there's been changes a little bit along the way. Obama's done some executive orders that have helped for juvenile, so forth. But a juvenile, obviously, no matter what, couldn't vote. But I believe it's the same situation. You go through the naturalization process, you become a U.S. citizen, you have all the same rights as any other U.S. citizen.
Yeah, actually, it was beautiful. Just this last week, we held the first naturalization ceremony to be held at the State House. And we had 19 new citizens, and I was able to welcome them to their state government, and also then actually have them go through and apply to register to vote. Usually a voter registration form, a paper form, had been historically given to them. That day we were able to register them online, try to get that information on, and so that they walked away. Or also we're able to show them the new voting machines, because they've never been in a polling place probably. And so familiarize themselves. This is how you vote now in the state of Rhode Island that you're now a U.S. citizen in.
So you can register online now, correct?
You can actually register to vote online. That is a new option that people have. What's really great about that, most people will probably register to vote at the DMV, or they'll do it on a paper form somewhere. But what's great about the system is that it actually allows you to update your voter registration information online. So say I registered to vote when I went to the DMV 10 years ago, and now I just moved, I bought a house. How do I go about that? Well, you can go online and change your voter registration address. And that's really important to keep updated.
And this is probably a good time, or as good a time as any, for you to tell us what the website is, so that someone can go and check what they need to, at least in the state of Rhode Island.
Absolutely.
We'll give them Massachusetts.
So you can go to the Secretary of State's website, Rhode Island Secretary of State website, which is sos.ri.gov. But I'm actually going to point you to a different one for this online voter registration, because it also allows you to figure out where you need to go vote. We'll soon have sample ballots on the website as well, so you can look ahead of time. I like to tell people elections are not a pop quiz. They are, you should be able to look at the questions ahead of time, get your answers together, and then just go to the voting booth and do them. Right. So you can go online and find out, and then also see who's already representing you. Say you have a question on, something that's happening in your neighborhood, and you think that your state rep or your state senator has some wherewithal to work on this issue. You can find out who your state rep or senator are. You can find out who your member of Congress is who's representing you, your senators, your executive branch, the governor, the lieutenant governor, all those people are listed in your voter information center, and that's at vote.ri.gov. So vote.ri.gov, you can check where you're registered, how you're registered. Are you registered as an independent, a Democrat, a Republican? Which for the general, by the way, doesn't matter. I get that question a lot. Does it matter that I'm, no, it's one ballot now for the general election, and you get to choose who you want to represent you from the local level to the federal level. And this is the first election that we are no longer going to have what is commonly called in Rhode Island the master lever, which is really was a master arrow in the paper ballot. But it's basically straight party ticket. You cannot go in and say, I just want to vote for all the Republicans on this ballot or all the Democrats on this ballot. You now have to go through the ballot, one elected office after another, and fill that out. Now, the parties will be, the candidates will be labeled by party when that is the case. Some municipal elections, they don't have to be identified by party because it's a nonpartisan municipal council. But for all the others that do have a party attachment or classification, those are going to be labeled, and you'll be able to follow through. And I really want to encourage voters to go through that ballot, please, ahead of time.
Ahead of time.
And then go ahead and mark the entire ballot. It's so important. I mean, a lot of times the media focuses so much on the federal races and on the national. But, you know, the decisions in your community are made by your local elected officials.
Can you get to that vote website that you talked about through the Secretary of State's
Yes,
website?
vote.ri.gov is part of the
It
Secretary of
is,
State's website.
because
yes.
I do go on that a lot, actually, and the reason I do it is to see where I'm voting, because
Yes.
the precincts
The polling
it
places,
changes,
they can
right?
change. Yep, exactly.
So I always go where am I voting at the middle school, the high school, where am I this time? And I also check to see if affiliated or disaffiliated,
Yep.
whatever I did the
If the
last time,
affiliation went
to see if
through.
it went
Yep.
through. Yeah.
And that website, that vote.ri.gov, is actually very easily seen on a mobile phone. We've optimized the website so that you can see it. You're stuck somewhere on a grocery store line or something, and you have some time on your hands. Go ahead and check it out.
That's my children. I still use a computer. I'm old-fashioned. You know, it's a regular computer.
Yeah.
And speaking of old-fashioned, so it's been 17 years since we've had the machines with the master lever.
Yeah,
Is that right?
that's
Yeah.
right. And yet we still call it that.
The
but
lever,
yeah.
right.
So absentee ballots, what are the terms, what's the window to use an absentee ballot?
So the last day, first of all, I want to say that the last day to register to vote is October 8th. Because
Is that just in Rhode Island, Nellie? Or
that's just in Rhode Island.
Okay.
Every state has their own voter registration
sure and
rules.
check.
And in Rhode Island, it's 30 days before an election. So if 2 weeks before the election you decide you want to focus on this and you realize you're not registered, you're out of luck, because you cannot vote at that point in the election. You have to. So I really want to encourage everybody to, as you're listening to this, check on your phone or on your computer, your laptop, your iPad, whatever it is, to go to vote.ri.gov, look for your name. Basically, what you need to put in is your name, your date of birth, and your zip code. And it should be able to find you. If it doesn't, like in my case, I'm Gorbea Diaz originally from my driver's license, coming from Puerto Rico. Now, my voter registration is only under Gorbea. If you have any kind of issue with your last name, or you got married and now you're using your maiden name, or you got divorced, whatever, any questions, call our office and we'll be able to walk you through.
Telephone number?
222-2340. So 401-222-2340. And my election staff will walk you through and make sure you find it. So once you find your voter information, then you can look at your ballot, you can look it through. Now, if you know that you're going to be away November 8th, then you can apply for a mail ballot. And the time period for mail ballots is up to October 18th. So right now you could go online and say, I need a ballot mailed to my house, because I know I'm going to be away on November 8th or that week. So the last day to order that mail ballot is October 18th. So last day to register to vote, October 8th. Last day for mail ballot application, October 18th. What happens October 19th? Say something happens and you didn't do it, or you suddenly realize you have a business trip and it's November 1st. I really wanted to vote in this election. Well, you can still go into city or town hall and do an emergency ballot. And I know it sounds dire, but you can just walk in and say, I just can't vote on that day. And then they will give you a ballot. You'll put it again into, similar to the provisional ballot kind of situation. You'll put it into an envelope, and that will be counted a little bit later.
So mail-in ballots, do they get counted the same as if you go in and vote?
They do. Yeah, I mean, the Board of Elections handles the mail ballots, and they're the ones who will be receiving them and evaluating and all that. So, but yeah, the ballots are all counted in Rhode Island. I mean, I know in other jurisdictions that's not the case. In Rhode Island, yes, they're all counted.
Even if it's like the machines have a wide discrepancy, as one person's really leading the other by many more than...
No, yeah, that doesn't matter. There's an accurate count at the end of every election.
So now that we're in the state of Rhode Island modernized, do you think that that puts an end to, as I was mentioning, absentee ballots, where a student lives in Rhode Island, went to school in Arizona, gets to vote 2 different places in 2 different elections?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, the possibility is always there. I think it's widely overreported in terms of an actual thing that happens.
Fair enough.
What I will say this is, if you have a college student and they need a mail ballot, they can go on our website. I have a section specifically for students that are out, that are, actually that's for students who are here and would like to vote in their original state of residency and voter registration. And then yes, the students that are Rhode Islanders that happen to be somewhere else just have to fill out a mail application, and they should do it now so that we can process it quickly.
We used to be very excited if we could get the college student to vote once, so.
Yeah, no, it is. Actually, that's going to be a whole other effort that we'll be launching very soon to really speak to millennials about the importance of voting and try to get that vote out.
And an editorial comment here, wouldn't it be wonderful if people paid as much attention to the voting issues as one has to in order to become a citizen and be entitled to vote?
Yeah.
Most of those are certainly well steeped and understand and
I
have spent
always
that time to learn.
Took my children with me when I voted, even when they were very young, just so they got the sense of what it was all about. And, you know, that some of them, I have to admit, predated the scans, and they were actually closing the curtain with me and coming in. But it was just sort of a civics lesson to give to your children. So
yeah, what I'd love to see is not just that, but also have everybody have conversations around, are you going to vote? When are you going to vote? Are you going to do a mail ballot? Or, you know, are you going to have to go to city or town hall? I mean, there is really no reason why people should not vote. I mean, we have mail ballots, we have emergency ballots, plus the day of election. So I really want to encourage Rhode Islanders to get out there and vote, particularly take a close look at your municipal and local elections. Those are really important. Take a look at the back of the ballot where you'll see the referenda questions. We've got 7 statewide referenda questions, all very important. They will, you know, 5 of them have to do with bonds that the state government is trying to issue for investments, important investments in our community. And then the first 2 are actually constitutionally related questions, one around the expansion of casino gambling into the town of Tiverton, and the other one having to do with the Ethics Commission and broadening the powers of the, or I should say restoring the powers of the Ethics Commission. So.
Good. For David, so we've talked and you've dealt with clients who've been convicted at times, and then they've served their time. Can they vote? How do they get to vote?
We have changed the law on that recently. If you are convicted of a felony and you've served your sentence, it's my understanding your right to vote now is restored automatically.
Yes, absolutely. And if you hadn't registered before you were convicted, you can just register at that point, yes.
After
the only time you can't vote is while you are serving your sentence. That's right.
Right.
And for those who might be either disabled, mentally impaired, somehow physically challenged, you would fight for their rights, obviously, to vote. How does that actually play out at the voting booth?
Again, I'm very proud to say that, for example, our online voter registration system was evaluated precisely for accessibility to a variety of people with different disabilities and got the highest rating possible. So we programmed the system keeping that in mind, that population in mind. You can actually apply to have a Braille or tactile ballot sent to you, mailed to you. The deadline for that is September 26th. So you need to do that before the 26th of September. And then at the polling place, we actually have, every polling place has a machine that basically marks the ballot for you and is able to interact with the person for a variety of disabilities. So you can do it, basically on Braille. You could do it basically on hearing. If you're hearing impaired, it has for a SIP puff as well, tube to be connected to it. So what you do there is the ballot, the paper ballot, which is the same as everybody else's, gets put into what we call the auto mark machine because it's marking the ballot for you. Then you interact with the machine as you need to. It marks the ballot for you. It replays to you your choices so you know that it's marking it exactly how you want it. Then it marks the ballot, and that then gets taken to the ballot scanning machine, and those have worked pretty well, actually. So,
and are these new scanning machines?
These are not. No, the ballot marking machines are the ones that we purchased. They were not as old as the original counting machines.
Okay.
So we took a look at the technology that was out there with members of the community that represents people with disabilities, and they were more comfortable with this current equipment, given some of the possibilities that there might be in the future.
But this equipment will mark the ballot so that the
Yes.
new ballots can be read.
They've been upgraded to read the current ballot systems that have been upgraded, yes.
So you're championing the idea of accuracy and making sure that everything is fair. Not surprisingly, every year, and particularly this year, there are issues surrounding voting. Candidates alleging that there's rigging, there's gerrymandering. You can explain what that is. Why don't you help us debunk some of the fraud myths? Are there still very many dead people voting?
So, so one of the things that I did right off the bat when I came in was I had Rhode Island join the Electronic Registration Information Center, which is a nonprofit where the board of directors are member states who pay into the system.
Massachusetts might too?
So Massachusetts isn't a member yet.
Isn't yet, okay.
But there are over, I'm going to say there's over 20 states at this point that are members. And what we've agreed to do is to exchange our voter lists as well as our DMV files. And so all of that information is cross-checked in this amazing IBM-produced program. Voters on our system are checked against the Social Security master death file. And so if that comes, then we were able to remove them. We actually did that match, and it was less than, I want to say it was less than 1,500 that were found under that, because Rhode Island already had a system of connecting vital statistics. So when a person is deceased and they're reported to vital statistics, that information would come to the voter registration database. Where we didn't have as good a process was if somebody moved to Florida and they passed and they were still a registered voter in Rhode Island. We had no way to get that information back. So ERIC helps us get deceased voters off the list. It also identified unregistered people who are living in the state, as well as people who might have already registered. Say I moved to DC. I went to college there, and then I decided I'm going to stay there. And I go and get a driver's license. I register to vote in the District of Columbia. The ERIC program will allow us to know that, so that we then send, we can't just take the person off based on that one thing, because voting rights are very precious. So you don't want to make it real easy to take people off the rolls. What we do is we send letters to each address. If one of them comes back undeliverable, say the Rhode Island comes back, that person's no longer there, then that's when we're able to take the person off. If not, if we don't hear anything from either address, then we've marked them as inactive in our system. And if they do not vote in Rhode Island in 2 federal elections, meaning 4 years, then we remove them. So again, and for those of people who are concerned about these people on the lists, you have to, at this point, present a photo ID, you have to do a number of things. So, we really have had very few, nationally, there's been very, very few instances of voter impersonation that have been documented.
Good to know.
There's a lot of stories.
Yes.
But as I like to tell people, a story, as you know, is
a story.
Is a story. It's not a fact. If you really feel that you see something, please go ahead and report it.
And Rhode Island, one of the things about our state is we're a small state. Everybody knows everybody. So you do get a lot of things being reported, probably more so than many other states, which is why it seems like what happens is so rampant. But as you said, we have a very strong protection of voters, especially with the IDs that are required and everything else, so that we're probably much better than many other states.
I mean, and I'll say this. I mean, I did not, favor the photo ID law. I thought there was already sufficient identification with having to match the signatures. Fine. I mean, that can be a subject of discussion.
Sure.
But I even looking at it before we had the photo ID, I think there were like 4 instances in 10 years, and it really had to do with people voting from an address that they were not really living at. It wasn't people showing up and saying, I'm so-and-so. So, again.
Many move frequently. So apart from cases that I'm not going to ask you about right now in terms of those who've had their rights denied, but even at polling booths for years there have been stories, alleged or not, where there's been some form of harassment at the polling booth. David, what is such a thing called harassment suit-worthy? Is that a litigious issue, or
Well,
is that just something we just
It's
need to admonish and move
probably
on?
something that should be reported to the Secretary of State's office and dealt with that way on the day of, because once everything's gone by, unless you can show there's some kind of scheme or something that's put in place to try to stop folks of a certain race or whatever from voting, it's a very difficult case to proceed with. It's something you need to deal with that day. And Rhode Island has laws that are designed to stop that. You can't have candidates, I think, within a certain
50
number,
feet
right,
of the polling place. And that's marked by the poll
Right.
workers. They're supposed to mark that.
And there are supposed to be workers there. Here's how I would deal with something like that. The first person I would go to is to ask for a supervisor at the polling place, see if they can help you. If they're not helping you and you still have questions, then I'd call the Secretary of State's office. They're open on election
Well,
day.
we are absolutely open all the
Right.
whole day. And then we'll I mean, the other entities, I mean, the ACLU handles a lot of these cases as well. The Board of Elections will have the say. And then the other thing is you can talk to the local boards of canvassers in your community. So there are very many, there's 4 different places that you can go to try to see, get some satisfaction on that very day.
And that's the most important thing, is to get it on that day so your right to vote is protected.
That's right.
And there had been stories about even the supervisors weren't helping someone who was disabled, or if someone was mentally challenged, then you shouldn't be voting, or if they didn't say it outright, they just made it extremely difficult. Well, if they don't get to vote on that day, then they didn't vote on that day. So your suggestion is, again, what, Nellie?
Well, I mean,
Secretary
you can go, you can call your local board of canvassers. You can call my office for. I mean, absolutely, we will be there to help anybody who calls about any kind of issues at the polling place. And then the Board of Elections, actually, and the local boards of canvassers are actually the ones handling the polling places that day. But yes, we will be manning phones and helping people out. Another entity, if you wanted to go non-governmental, is the ACLU, and they take a very active role on election day, as well as lawyers. So I'll make one last pitch though for the election day, which is we will be needing poll workers on election day. We need 5,000 poll workers on November 8th. So if you're listening to this and you've got any kind of curiosity, it's a long day, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and you have to work the whole time. But I want to make sure that people know that contact my office at 401-222-2340. We will be posting a form online soon to try to help the local boards of canvassers recruit more people for election day.
Gorbea. Good to know. I hope it's not a long training period.
No, it's 3 hour. You have to go to a
Good.
3-hour training.
That's fair enough.
beforehand.
Good to know. Thank you, Secretary Gorbea. We really appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
We hope that this has been helpful to you. We hope that it's answered some of your questions about voting. And there is online information about the Secretary of State's office, both in Massachusetts and in Rhode Island, if you should need assistance. Get out and vote.